You haven't even opened your eyes yet. Your alarm just went off. Or maybe it went off 2 minutes ago and you've been lying there doing that thing where you're technically awake but refusing to admit it. And then, without making a single conscious decision, your hand moves. It knows where the phone is. It always knows where the phone is. And before you've had a thought, before you've registered whether you're cold or warm or whether your back hurts, you're already scrolling, already checking, already scanning. It takes about 4 seconds. 4 seconds from the first flicker of consciousness to staring at a screen. Now here's what I want you to think about. That behavior, that specific automatic 4-second phone grab is regularly described as a sign of addiction or weakness or a failure of willpower, or evidence that tech companies have successfully colonized the one part of your day that used to belong only to you. And look, that framing isn't entirely wrong. But it is missing something enormous, because what if the real explanation for why you do this is older than smartphones by about 2 million years? What if the impulse your phone is exploiting wasn't invented by Silicon Valley, it was just borrowed? And what if the reason it's so hard to stop isn't because you lack discipline, but because the mechanism driving it kept your ancestors alive through every hostile morning of their entire existence? Stick around, because by the end of this, you're going to look at that 4-second phone grab completely differently. And you might never blame yourself for it again, which depending on your therapist's billing rate is either great news or a very expensive problem. Here's a scene I want you to hold in your head. No phones, obviously. No alarm clocks. No concept of Tuesday. You're a human, more or less like you, and you're waking up in a small camp on the edge of an African savanna roughly 100,000 years ago. The sky is doing that thing where it's not quite dark but not quite light, the gray-blue hour that painters love and predators also love, because visibility is low enough for both of you to use it. You have been unconscious for several hours. This is, biologically speaking, a terrifying thing to have been. Unconscious means unaware. Unaware means vulnerable. And in the world your brain was built for, vulnerable had a mortality rate. So the second you start coming out of sleep, something kicks in before you even know you're awake. Your eyes aren't open. You're not thinking anything coherent. But your nervous system is already running a checklist. What sounds are wrong? What smells have changed? Is the fire still going? Is everyone still here? Where is the threat? This wasn't a personality trait. This wasn't optional. This was the minimum viable behavior for surviving mornings in an environment where the number of things that could kill you was, conservatively, enormous. The humans who woke up slowly, who luxuriated, who thought, I'll assess the situation in a bit. Those humans had shorter careers. The ones who snapped to threat scan the instant they regained consciousness, they made it to the afternoon, and eventually, across hundreds of thousands of years of exactly that selection pressure, they made it to you. This is the inheritance you're working with, and it runs a lot deeper than a bad habit. Let's talk about a specific piece of biology, because this is where things get genuinely interesting. In the first 15 to 30 minutes after waking up, your body produces a significant spike of cortisol. Not a trickle, a spike. Levels that can roughly double or even triple your baseline within the first half hour of consciousness. This is called the Cortisol Awakening Response, and researchers have been studying it seriously since the late 1990s. A team led by psychoneural endocrinologist Clemens Kirschbaum, and yes, that is a real job title which tells you academia is doing fine, documented this pattern in considerable detail. The CAR, as they abbreviate it, turns out to be one of the most robust and reproducible findings in stress research. It happens every day, in almost everyone. It is not a pathology, it is a feature. Now here's what cortisol is actually doing in this context. Most people know cortisol as the stress hormone, which is accurate but incomplete in the same way that calling fire the hot thing is accurate but incomplete. In the awakening context, cortisol isn't signaling that something bad is happening. It's preparing you for the possibility that something bad could happen. It sharpens attention. It elevates alertness. It mobilizes energy resources. It primes your threat detection systems. It essentially boots your brain into high readiness mode before you've made a single decision about the day. Your brain, in other words, starts every single morning in high alert mode. Not because anything is wrong, but because for the vast majority of human history, the morning was statistically one of the more dangerous parts of the day. Predators move at dawn. Rival groups raid at dawn. The fire goes out during the night. You need to know what the world looks like right now before you do anything else, because acting on yesterday's information in a dynamic threat environment can get you killed. The cortisol awakening response is your body's way of saying, threat scan first, everything else second. It's an ancient alarm system that predates alarm clocks by a considerable margin. And if you think this is uniquely human, spend a few minutes watching what happens in any social primate group at dawn. Chimpanzee troops do not ease into their mornings. The moment individuals begin waking, there's an immediate burst of social scanning. Who's present? Who's missing? What sounds are coming from the perimeter of the camp? Vervet monkeys, which have been studied extensively for their remarkably sophisticated alarm call systems, show heightened vigilance specifically in the early morning hours. Meerkats, those famously photogenic little sentinels, are doing something considerably more serious than posing for wildlife photography calendars when they post themselves on termite mounds at dawn. They're running a perimeter assessment of the overnight environmental state. The pattern is consistent across social species that face dawn predation pressure, wake up, immediately assess the situation, then, and only then, relax into the day once you've confirmed it's safe to do so. The survey comes before the coffee, so to speak. What's interesting is that for humans specifically, the situation being assessed was never just physical predators. It was also social. In a small band of 30 to 50 people, which is roughly the group size humans lived in for most of our evolutionary history, the social environment was also a threat environment. Who's angry this morning? Who shifted alliances while you were asleep? Who is aligned with whom now? Social conflict in a small band isn't just emotionally unpleasant. It affects your resource access, your protection, your standing. The social scan and the threat scan were effectively running the same software. Your brain was checking for lions, separately from checking for interpersonal tension. It was checking for anything that could go wrong, across every relevant dimension before you were fully equipped to handle it. Keep that in mind, because it becomes important very shortly. Now I want to pause here and address the thing a lot of you are already thinking, because there is a very reasonable, very well-documented counter-argument to everything I've said so far, and it goes like this. Sure, maybe there's something to the morning vigilance thing, but the phone behavior isn't about ancient survival reflexes. It's about dopamine. Tech companies have specifically engineered these apps to be maximally compelling. Variable reward schedules, red notification badges, infinite scroll. These are deliberate design choices made by very smart, very well-paid people to create compulsive behavior. This isn't evolution. This is exploitation. And look, that framing is not wrong. It is exploitation. The research on variable reward schedules, the kind of intermittent reinforcement that B.F. Skinner first documented in pigeons and that app designers have since turned into a multi-billion-dollar engineering discipline, is real, and it is genuinely damning. Tristan Harris, the former Google design ethicist who eventually left and became one of the loudest critics of the attention economy, has documented extensively how these platforms are built on deliberately hacking human psychology for engagement time. The Senate hearings. The leaked internal documents about Instagram and adolescent self-esteem. None of that is fabricated, but here's the specific thing that framing misses. Variable reward schedules work because they are latching onto something. Dopamine is not manufactured by your phone. It's a neurotransmitter your brain already had, already used, already relied on to mark important environmental information as worth pursuing. The reason a notification badge makes your attention snap toward the screen is not that your phone invented that response, it's that your phone found the wire and plugged into it. The question is not whether tech companies are exploiting a reflex, they clearly are. The question is, what is the reflex, where does it actually come from, and why is it so exploitable in the first place? And the answer to that question is a lot more interesting than bad apps bad. Here's the core of it. You are not checking your phone because you're weak or addicted. You are checking your phone because your brain, on its first morning boot sequence, is running a threat and opportunity scan that it was built to run. And your phone is simply the most information-dense object in your immediate environment. Your ancient surveillance system encounters a device that contains more social signals, more potential threats, more opportunity markers, more status information than your entire ancestral village could have generated in a week. And it does exactly what it was always going to do with something like that. It scans it immediately, before the rest of you is even online. The 4-second phone grab is not a malfunction. It is a perfect execution of an ancient program running in a completely novel environment, which is, as it turns out, a sentence that describes a genuinely alarming percentage of modern human behavior once you start looking for it. Let's build the evidence picture out a bit more because there are several distinct threads here worth following. On the social scanning side, there's some interesting indirect support from archaeology, evidence from Paleolithic burial sites, and researchers have done remarkably detailed work at sites like Sungir in Russia and various Levantine locations going back 40 to 50,000 years, suggests that social hierarchies within early human groups were tracked and maintained with real complexity. differential burial goods, evidence of sustained care for injured or disabled group members across years, material symbols of status and affiliation. All of this implies that social information about who stood where relative to whom was actively maintained and mattered enormously for survival. You don't maintain complex social hierarchies without also running the monitoring systems to track them continuously. On the biological side, research by Martika Hall and colleagues at the University of Pittsburgh has linked the cortisol awakening response specifically to social anticipatory stress, the kind of anxiety about what you might encounter when you interact with other people. The CAR turns out to be stronger and more pronounced when people are facing anticipated social challenges, which means your body's morning threat scan isn't just calibrated to physical danger. It's partly calibrated to the social environment specifically. Your cortisol is spiking because it's preparing you for people, not just for weather. And then there's the information-seeking piece. A 2021 study published in Current Biology by researchers including Tali Sharot at University College London found that humans have what she calls an information-seeking drive that operates partially independently of expected outcomes, meaning we seek information not just when we expect it to be good news, but because the drive to know itself is intrinsically rewarding. Sharot's team found that the brain treats information in ways that are neurologically similar to how it treats food or money, as a primary resource, not just a means to an end. In a dynamic threat environment, information is a primary resource. Not knowing something important can get you killed. The drive to seek information first thing in the morning, urgently, immediately before you've done anything else, isn't idle curiosity. It's the information-hungry survival brain doing exactly what it was built to do. Your phone just happens to be the richest information source your species has ever encountered. Now here's where the timeline matters, and I want you to feel the scale of this. The iPhone is 18 years old, smartphones as a mass phenomenon. The thing where every adult human is walking around with a networked information terminal in their pocket is maybe 15 years of actual widespread adoption. 15 years. The cortisol awakening response is millions of years old. The orienting reflex, the automatic snap of attention toward novel or potentially significant information, is older than our genus. The social monitoring circuitry that makes you care about the status movements and mood states of the people around you predates Homo sapiens by a significant margin. What you have is a brain that evolved its morning protocols in an environment where the relevant information field was approximately 30 people and a few kilometers of savanna. Then, roughly 10,000 years ago, agriculture created settled communities with hundreds or thousands of people, and the social environment got considerably more complex. The morning scan got cognitively heavier. Then cities with their layered hierarchies and written records, and strangers whose decisions affected your grain supply. The information environment expanded enormously. But the jump from city-scale information to smartphone-scale information is categorically different from any previous transition in terms of sheer speed. In 1 decade, the morning scan went from check the immediate physical and social environment of the people you actually know, to check a device that aggregates the social signals, threat indicators, status movements, and opportunity markers of approximately 8 billion people simultaneously. The pipe got roughly 100,000 times wider, essentially overnight, from an evolutionary standpoint. The hardware didn't get 100,000 times wider. It's still running on the same cortisol spike. The same orienting reflex, the same dawn vigilance circuitry that was calibrated for a small band in a local environment. The mismatch between the pipe and the hardware is where things get genuinely weird. Think about what this actually looks like in your own morning. You wake up, the car fires, your brain is in morning threat scan mode, cortisol elevated, attention systems primed, social monitoring circuits warm and running. And the first thing it lands on is all of it. Every ambient social signal from your entire extended network simultaneously. Every opportunity marker disguised as a LinkedIn notification. Every status comparison engine dressed up as an Instagram feed. Every piece of ambient threat information about things happening to people you've never met but who, to your social brain, register as part of a tribe that needs monitoring. Your morning brain is trying to assess the conditions for a walk to the watering hole. Instead, it's getting a full-spectrum social and environmental scan of the entire human species. And what does it do? Exactly what it was designed to do. It processes. It tries to make sense of it. It flags the potential threats, the status movements, the relationship changes, the missing persons. Except the input volume is so far beyond what it was calibrated for that the processing never really completes. The scan runs and runs. The cortisol stays elevated past the point it should naturally come down. And before you've eaten anything, before you've stepped outside, before you've had a single conversation with someone physically in the room with you, you're already carrying a social cognitive load that your ancestors might have accumulated across an entire week. Your morning brain is not lazy. Your morning brain is exhausted before the morning has started. And this is the part where I want it to stop feeling like a nature documentary about your dysfunction and start feeling like something genuinely useful. The 4-second phone grab is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that you're broken or that tech companies have defeated you or that you need to finally commit to being a morning routine person. It is a morning surveillance system hundreds of thousands of years old, executing with extraordinary precision in an environment it was never designed for. The behavior makes complete sense. The mismatch is the problem, not you, which is both comforting and slightly unsettling, because it means the behavior won't disappear through willpower alone. You cannot willpower your way out of a cortisol spike. You cannot shame yourself into not running a threat scan. The mechanism simply doesn't respond to that kind of persuasion. What you can do, and this is what the research on things like phone-free bedrooms and delayed first screen time is actually pointing toward, is change what the scan lands on first. Your brain is going to scan something in those first few seconds. It cannot not scan. The question is whether you give it an 8 billion person social network or a patch of morning light, the sound of your immediate environment, a glass of water, the physical fact of a room that is safe and yours. The mechanism is non-negotiable. The input isn't. And that's a significantly more useful frame than be less addicted, which is essentially asking your ancient threat detection system to please take the morning off, which it has been politely declining to do for 2 million years and shows no sign of reconsidering. Think back to that person in the camp at dawn, eyes just opening, running the checklist. What sounds are wrong? What smells have changed? Is everyone still here? Where is the threat? They were asking exactly the right questions. They were just asking them about a world that was 30 people and a few kilometers of grass and sky. You're asking those same questions with the same brain about a world that is effectively infinite in every direction. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just slightly, and by slightly I mean comprehensively, overspecified for the environment you're living in, which is, when you step back far enough, extremely funny in a way that takes about 12 hours of your day to fully stop being funny. Now, I genuinely want to know this, and I want you to answer it in the comments without thinking too hard about it. What is the first specific thing you actually check when you pick up your phone in the morning? Messages, so social monitoring, news, so threat scanning, social media, so status assessment, email, so obligation tracking, something else entirely? Because I think the answer tells you something real about which part of the morning scan system is loudest in you. And I'd be genuinely curious to see whether the same patterns show up across different people, different places, different ages. The comments on this one might actually be interesting. If this kind of thing resonates, using evolutionary psychology to make slightly uncomfortable sense of the stuff your brain does entirely without your permission, subscribe. We have a lot more of this coming, and most of it is going to make you feel simultaneously more understood and significantly more unsettled about the fact that you are, at the end of the day, a prehistoric mammal doing its absolute best in a very strange world.